Hello, my name is Christian and this is my 10th video. I'm about to go to the beach, so I've slip-slop-slapped. I'm wearing my sunscreen and I'm wearing the hat that I wear to the seaside. But the hat is also relevant to today's topic because I'm going to be talking about my home city and cults. Toward the end of the video, I'm going to try and consider why it is that the cult is replacing the zombie as their most prominent villain, monstrous villain that you see in films nowadays. Not long ago, a YouTube channel I'm subscribed to released a video called Fremantle. The city that I love and spend all of my time in is called Fremantle, and it has a long history of being associated with hippies and New Age spirituality and cults. In fact, there was a sannyasa movement in the 1980s, also known as the Orange People, that left a mark on Fremantle, and to this day I actually have friends who have still retained the name that they adopted as a sannyasin, having changed it from its original name when they got involved with the movement. So this man, MrSikkant, he had clearly heard of Fremantle's reputation, and in the video it starts with him standing in Fremantle saying, "I've come to one of the most culty cities in the world," I think he says. It's very interesting. Imagine if your city was called one of the most culty cities in the world. I was intrigued, definitely. Though, as the video went on, it became increasingly apparent that he was largely chasing ghosts. He didn't try to describe what he meant by cults, and a lot of the time he seemed to be including anything that he would like, anything that he fancies in the formulation of cults. It started off with him going into the local hotel, which is a venue that I organized lots of my events at, and he asked the man, "Have you seen any cults around here?" And the man said, "What, like small horses?" He heard that a woman was so sprightly because of cod liver oil, and he presented like he didn't know what that was, went into a shop, found the oil and treated it as an oddity. It was only really in the latter part of the documentary that he went into the peripheries of Fremantle where people don't often go, and went to the Scientology Center, which of course is undoubtedly a cult, at least so far as traditional formulations of separating a person from their usual community, extracting money from them, dismantling their identity, following the lead of a charismatic leader who may have already left the surf. This hat, of course, is reminiscent of the leader of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, which I find very, very funny when I wear this. So this got me thinking, what do we mean when we say cults now? Can we still recognize them? I don't think it's one of those things where you say, "I can't define it, but I know it when I see it." And there's a few reasons for that. First off, MrSikkant was seemingly seeing cults where other people more familiar with Fremantle would have not seen cults. So one's familiarity is not often an adequate measure for detecting what a cult is, or unfamiliarity. So as an example of this, last year at the beginning of Nativity, I was in church, and everybody stood up and recited together the Ten Commandments. And then later, they all stood up and in unison recited the Nicene Creed. Now, I was thinking, it didn't occur to MrSikkant to go into a church, because for him, churches have been around so long ago that they're practically orthodox, they're normalized. But suppose that he wasn't familiar with them, and he walked into this building where you have all of these people standing up, and in the same tone, at the same tempo, they're reciting the same thing. He would have thought that he had struck gold. It would have seemed extremely culty. And so, once again, familiarity can make what would ostensibly be cult-like behavior to new eyes completely pass by the radar to those who are already well familiar with the behavior and the culture. So, this is where I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, and I know that this isn't actually the etymology of it, but nonetheless I find it fun to suppose that cult and culture overlap. So by our culture, I could mean a national culture, an ethnic culture, the culture of a system. I've just returned from Japan, and in Japan I saw a poster, and it said, I believe, "Find the new you like never before." It was so funny. It was so funny to see. And this wasn't a mistranslation. This was the most affluent area in all of Japan, and it was very clearly very good professional work. So what does it mean when one says, "Find the new you like never before"? You might see it and take it for granted, but every now and then, if you have eyes to see and curiosity, capitalism and late capitalism will jump out at you, and it just seems like this really strange thing. And we have this kind of messaging here as well. So, what is the messaging with this poster? So, in the modern age, there are more institutions, whereas previously there are fewer. Now there are more markets. Previously there are fewer, and there's more people and more diversity, whereas previously, arguably, depending on where you were, it was more homogenous. And in this system, we're expected to compete, and so we must establish our own unique value propositions. What can we offer to the market? Now, the existential genius of capitalism, and certainly late capitalism, is to connect this call to identity and authenticity. And so the idea is you find who you are, and that is the best position from which to offer goods to the world and extract value and worth and whatnot. But because it's an extremely disruptive system, you must never settle. Enough is not enough. So you may have found the real you previously, but do you want to do it again? Maybe this time will be like never before, right? It's so funny when you think about it, but it's so normalized. But compare this to how I described cults previously. It's encouraging somebody to treat their identity, this self, as something to alter and surpass and largely, potentially, leave behind. It will call people to spend a great deal of time away from their friend and family, traveling across the world, or spending lots of time commuting to the point where they are, as we're seeing increasingly, largely isolated, right? It extracts their energy, so to speak. And there are indeed charismatic leaders. There's been this huge influx of these films and series presenting billionaires as these Übermenschen, as these extremely charismatic, extremely clever people who are almost like Olympian gods in a way, with their influence and capriciousness, right? But they are largely celebrated in these shows, and people will sit and they will binge these shows watching these extremely charismatic people. And then, because what we consume largely influences our behavior, they may well go out and be viewing the world through the lens of the media that they're consuming. Their perspective is informed now by the role models who have won capitalism and are to be emulated. Okay. Now, of course, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but you can see how culture, once defamiliarized, can actually seem quite culty. So I've got a test for this that I like to do. I like to imagine that when somebody says something that they take for granted, they are, in my imagination, saying it alongside 20 other people who are saying it at the exact same time. Okay? This will kind of transmute what they're saying in a way. The substance is the same, the content is the same, but the context changes. So what do I mean? If I were to say it's for the greater good, that doesn't seem very culty. But if you get 20 people to stand next to me and we all say the greater good and nod at the same time, suddenly you have the film Hot Fuzz, where of course that's a film about a cult. So I've been thinking about this, talking about cults. How does this relate to monsters and zombies? So in a previous video, I said that the zombie was so popular, and this is not my original idea, this is a very trodden out idea by a lot of people. The reason the zombie was so popular in the 20th century and early 21st century was it was an expression of the ambient anxieties in a consumer culture of people losing their identity and becoming part of a mindless horde. Right? A kind of social contagion of stupidity and consumption. Okay? And lack of identity. But now, if you go to see a horror film or a thriller and you fancy gambling, a really good bet is that the twist is going to be a cult. I just got back from Japan, and on the way I watched 4 movies, and on 2 of them the twist was a cult. Before I went to Japan, I saw 2 movies, again, that were about cults. Right? I mentioned previously 28 Years Later. The new 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, largely exploring cults. Yeah. If you enjoy A24 movies, if you go and see one of those, it's extremely likely that the twist is going to be a cult. Okay? It's become very quickly a trope. That's actually annoying people who are reviewing films. So what's with this? Why has the cult become so popular? And it happens in a different way to the zombie movie, because when you go to see a zombie movie, you know that you're going to see a zombie movie, whereas the cult, in a way which I find quite poetic, it's rarely advertised, right? It's hidden. It reveals itself as the twist, okay? So it occurs in a different way, and yet it is extremely prevalent. So, if zombies were articulating a previous anxiety, what is the anxiety expressed by the cult? Now, one of my favorite sociologists, Max Weber, he distinguishes between different forms of authority. So there is traditional authority, where we've always done it this way. What would your grandma say? These are the rituals, try to carry them on to the next generation. There's a kind of conservatism involved in the traditional authority. There's rational legal authority, where you have to do it because this is the proper process, this is the system and the institution, and this is just how it's done. And then finally there's charismatic authority, where there is a person who is actually extremely compelling, and be it through love or be it through fear, they rise up the status hierarchy and they start exerting their influence on others to the point where their word becomes gospel, so to speak. And they bring people in. Now, what are we seeing at the moment? 2026. We're seeing traditional authority or traditions kind of fall away. Okay? I think lots of different people are seeing this in different ways. Some people are celebrating it. Some people are distraught about it. I'm not judging it as a good or a bad thing, but we are certainly seeing traditions fall away. We're also seeing rational institutional structures fail. In Australia, what's happening to our medical system, what's happening to our education system, what's happening to housing, all of these different systems, banking, finance, it does seem like an era of madness where people are increasingly recognizing the trust that we could place in our institutions previously now is very suspicious indeed. So when the previous structures and conditions that you could bank on fall away, people are probably more likely to be susceptible to charisma, conspiracy, to being compelled to do things that they wouldn't have done under traditional authority or institutional authority. And I think that this actually does indeed worry people. I think if you look at what politicians and the news and whatnot are focusing on, it is actually indeed concern over extremism, radicalisation, cults of personality, and so on. So in this vacuum which is opening up in the second quarter of the 21st century, their cult and cult-like behavior and being duped is stepping into the void. Hi, I'm just adding this part in because initially I intended to plug Andrew's radicalisation theory by Andrew Callahan, which I actually think is really, really good, but I forgot to mention it in the video. You can learn about the theory in this short clip here, or if you can stomach it, you can watch this longer documentary, which is really hard hitting, but it illustrates the point very well. So, we shall see if there are more cult movies moving forward. For what it's worth, I hope that Fremantle returns to its whimsy. I think that would be absolutely wonderful.
When we undressed to pray, my love, she got carried away. I gave her head and she ate my brain. How do I explain that to the missus? I wanna be with the ladybug I'm with. And so, dear mantis, we'll practice in secret. There are such lovely bugs. I never said that I was perfect.